Forgot my microphone. Okay, now hopefully you guys can hear me. Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to be making chicken BLTs on our leftover sourdough bread, and we're going to whip up an easy sour cream pound cake with some fresh strawberries and whipped cream. Kind of nice summery meal today. So let's start by getting our bacon in the pan frying up, and then we'll whip up our pound cake for to go in the oven. We're doing mini loaves because if you've ever made a pound cake before, it takes forever for it to bake. So we'll do a pound cake and then it will go nice and fast in the little mini loaves. Okay, we've got our bacon in. Put these in the sink. Just gonna use my tongs to spread them out, and I'm gonna turn my heat on to about a 6. We're gonna let these guys start kind of cooking up. But first, I'm gonna pull them apart. That way, they'll kind of fry up nicely. And I'm just doing a nice kind of crazy fry on them. I know they'll be a bit more crinkly and probably won't lay as nice on the sandwich, but I find it so much easier and I really like pan fried bacon. There we go. So we'll let those start kind of cooking up, and then let's work on our pound cake. Let me grab. We're going to start with a half a cup of butter and a cup of sugar, and we're going to cream those together. You want to use room temperature butter with this so that it will cream in there nicely. So you need a whole cup of granulated sugar, with a half a cup of butter, and room temperature will work the best for this because it will cream nicely. Cold butter will just take forever to cream. And just going to go in here with my hand mixer. And we're going to cream these two together until all of that sugar has incorporated into the butter. So we've got a nice kind of sugary butter paste. And keep mixing. I'm doing kind of a smaller batch, but if I were to do a big batch, your stand mixer is going to be your best friend for this because it will just cream up much nicer. Okay, we've got our butter and our sugar incorporated here. I'm just going to knock off this. There we go. There. Now we're going to add in 3 eggs. So the eggs are pretty much going to be what's going to give our cake here, the pound cake, a rise. It's a really dense cake, hence, pound. It's heavy. It's got a lot of butter, sugar, egg in it. We will use a teeny bit of baking powder to just give it a little help, but it's mainly just the eggs. Okay, we're going to cream our eggs into our butter and our sugar. And we're going to mix them until they're nice and incorporated. You don't want to overbeat them because you don't want it to be perfect. Okay, now we're going to add in our sour cream, our salt, our baking powder, and our vanilla. So we're going to use a half a cup of sour cream. So not a traditional pound cake, but the sour cream pound cake, which is similar, a little bit moister, a little bit lighter. And so we'll have that, and then this will go great with our chicken BLTs. So we need a half a cup of sour cream. Now I'm going to just kind of eyeball this here. That should be about a half a cup. And then we are going to add in 2 teaspoons of vanilla. You want to use vanilla extract, not imitation vanilla. You want the nice, delicious vanilla. You could also use almond extract. I love almond in my pancake, so you could do half and half, like a teaspoon of vanilla and a teaspoon of almond, or go all almond or all vanilla. But almond does work well. So we're going to do 2 teaspoons of vanilla. So 1 and 2. And then we're going to do a half a teaspoon of salt. Now I use salted butter, but if you weren't going to use salted butter, I would maybe do 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt to get that nice kind of flavor come out. So we got a half a teaspoon of salt, and then we're going to use a half a teaspoon of baking powder. And this is just going to give it a little help in its rise. Make it a little bit lighter so it's not quite as dense as a traditional pancake. We're going to give these, cream them up, and then we'll add in our flour, and we'll be ready to get these guys baking. There we go. Just going to mix it all the way through. Get rid of any of those lumps from the sour cream. There we go. Now, before we add in our flour, I'm just going to give our bacon a little turn. Let it have enough to sweat out that fat. I'm going to turn it down to a 5. I had it on 6, but I start higher and I slowly reduce the heat once it starts kind of sweating out so that I don't burn up my bacon. Especially because even though this is an original cut, it looks more like a thick cut bacon. Now let's add in our flour. We are going to use 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. We'll give in our first scoop. And now there is another second cup in here. My little tubs. I love these tubs. And they come with these measuring cups, which I just love. And each one has their own, but sometimes they migrate. So we've got 1.5 cups of flour. We're going to give these a good mix up, and then we'll be ready to put in our mini loaf pans. So I'm going to mix it until it's just incorporated. There we go. We'll have a nice thick batter because this is a it's got a butter base. Pound cakes have butter base, so they have a much thicker batter. I always typically use butter in my baking because I think it just tastes so much better. Okay, now I'm going to go through with my spatula here, and we'll just do a simple turn around just to make sure we get everything incorporated. There's no flour pockets. Typically, I always start with my wet ingredients, and then I add in my dry, which helps prevent any flour pockets. But I just want to make sure it's all mixed up. And now we're going to do our mini loaves. I love mini loaves because it cuts the cooking time by 60%. You don't need to cook it for nearly as long. Traditional pound cake's about an hour to an hour and 10 minutes. These will take about 25 minutes to cook, which is nice. The edges don't get as dried out as they do with a traditional one. And you've kind of got your pre-serving size up here. Okay, I'm going to go through and we're going to kind of spoon in our batter, and then we'll go through and even it out. Try to make sure each one gets an equal amount in there. This would make one big loaf if you wanted to, but it will make these 8 mini loaves, which are great. That's one thing. I have a crazy amount of loaf pans in different sizes, and they all cook at very different times. This is my favorite because they just take a smidge longer than muffins, which is nice. There we go. Now I'm going to go back through and we're going to even these all out. Now, these aren't going to pop up super huge because they are kind of just an egg base for rising. So it's a much denser bread than like a regular cake, but they'll still get a good rise on them.
You have a question? Do you know what you're doing for dinner yet?
I do not. I'm thinking it through. Last night I prepped up a sourdough loaf, a Gouda and black pepper loaf, and I'm hoping it will turn out because last night I set it down to do its kind of proofing, and typically around midnight I always do my lamination and I pop it in the oven or in the refrigerator to do the cold proof, and I completely forgot about it last night. So this morning it was a little overproofed, but I made sure to press all like that gases out of it, and I laminated it up and I popped it in the oven. I think it's going to turn out well. It might have a couple big bubbles in it. But we're going to have that with dinner tonight. It'll still taste great. Might not get the best kind of pop on it, but we'll see. I haven't done a major overproof like that in a while. But I am not one to throw away my mix. Okay. Give a good little shake these out. And we're going to pop these in the oven at 350 degrees. And we're going to cook them for about 25 minutes. We'll look at them. That should be good, but they might need a little more time. There we go. I'm going to set my timer. Got it going. Oven is still on. And now let's work on the rest of our lunch. And then we'll also make our strawberries and their little sugar sauce and some whipped cream to go along with our pound cake. So kind of a play on strawberry shortcake, but not doing a shortcake biscuit, but a pound cake. Let's give these a nice little turn. There. Okay. Let's get our chicken marinating and we're going to fillet it, and then we'll season it up and we'll start sauteing that off. So I've got two pretty big breasts here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of fillet it in half so they're much thinner. Here we go. That way we'll have much easier cooking time. If you leave them really thick, then you're going to get drier chicken because you're going to have to cook it longer. And that means you're going to have a drier outside to it. And then I'm just going to cut off this little bit of fat. Okay. So we have kind of 4 big fillets here, which will make, we'll probably be able to make 5 or 6 sandwiches out of them, but I'm just going to keep them as my 4 whole here. Let me take my knife since we're done with that one. I'll wash my hands. Okay. Now we're going to just do a quick little quick marinade, flash marinade on it using my favorite Worcestershires. Somebody mentioned Dale's seasoning yesterday, and I thought about doing it today, but I figured this actually will go better with the bacon. So we're going to just do a nice little drizzle over the top of each one. The reason why I use Worcestershire in it is this is a vinegar-based kind of seasoning, and that acid in the vinegar is going to break down the natural fat in the chicken and keep it nice and juicy when you cook it up. And it doesn't taste like vinegar. It has a very strong kind of pungent flavor to it, but when you cook it up, you don't get any of that. I'm going to do a nice sprinkle of onion powder over it. This is going to give it a nice savory flavor. And then my Mrs. Dash's table blend. I'm kind of seasoning them up, but I'm not going super strong on the spices today because I kind of want that bacon and everything to meld together in our sandwich. And then you
have a question. Do you post ingredients the day before so people can cook along?
I don't, but we've had a question about this, and I've thought about doing that. The biggest problem for me is I probably have to get my act together a little more because most of the time I have no idea what I'm cooking until like 30 minutes before I start cooking because I just don't plan it. But I think I definitely heard that, and I think we might plan on trying to do that at least like one day a week or something like that. I'm hoping once we get back into the school year and we get back into a routine, you know how summer is, it's gonna get a little crazy here. But we'll get back into that kind of time routine. Let me flip these over because we're gonna marinate on the other side as well.
You have some subscribers mentioning that that'd be a nice perk.
Yes, I know. I think I might do that. Oh, that's kind of a good idea. Maybe change some of my time to my recipe cards to that. I will definitely consider. Okay, let's do a little bit of Worcestershire. I said maybe we can start with like one meal a week. Get in there. I feel like I can plan one meal a week. Okay, let's do our onion powder. I know it's really funny because when I go to the grocery store, I buy a bunch of stuff, but I never have any idea what I'm actually going to cook with it. And then I'm like, ooh, what am I feeling like today? And that's kind of what it is. I knew I wanted to do this yesterday because I had my sourdough and I've been craving a BLT. I don't think I've had a BLT in years, but I've been craving one. Here we go. Nice little sprinkling over it. And then last, we'll finish up with our garlic salt. So super simple, but this is just a really delicious marinade. I do my pork chops like this, a variation of it, but it's got that nice enough season and flavor to it, but it keeps it nice and juicy and is delicious. Okay, we're going to add in a little bit of olive oil. We're going to kind of saute these off in here. I'm using a pretty big pan, so I want that's about a tablespoon and a half to kind of make sure I get a nice coating over it. I'm going to get my bacon turning here, making sure I get there. I typically am a lover of the thinner cut bacon, and this is supposed to be a thin cut bacon. I got it from Costco, but it is definitely thick. I find that the thinner cut bacons crisp up much nicer than the thick ones. So we're going to spread them out. I'm going to rotate them, and then I'll know they're all really ready is once they get that full golden brown color, but then you start to see the white foam because there's not a lot of liquid left in there. Get these guys heating up, and I'm going to move my strawberries over here because we'll cut these up in just a second and make the little sweet sauce with them. But while we're doing that, let's get our stuff prepped for the rest of our BLT. I've got lettuce, I've got tomatoes, so bacon, lettuce, tomato, but I add mayo because who doesn't love mayo? And I add red onion, and then chicken. So really, you have the base of the BLT, but then you've added everything else and made a completely different sandwich. Okay, for our red onion here, red onions are great on sandwiches and dips. These are the onions that are meant to be eaten raw versus cooked up. They lose their flavors when you cook them up, and they're not as good. And funny fact, I used to have, when I was a kid, I went to this little home daycare, and the lady there, the teacher, remember, she was amazing, but she ate red onions like an apple. She just walked around eating them like an apple. And I don't know how you could do that, but she did. Every day she ate one. I was like, I love red onions on things, but that's a bit much. Okay, we've got our onions to put on there. And then I have my tomatoes. I still have not sharpened up my knife from yesterday. I always find that when my knife is dull, it struggles to cut through tomatoes, which is why I'm poking them to make sure I get a good cut through so I don't make them too serrated on here. And once I actually cut this up, I will show you guys how to sharpen up my knife because I'll be done cutting up these in just a second. Most people, I think they find that is a very daunting process because they're kind of nervous with it, but it's super, super easy. I'll actually save this little bit to show you how sharp it is at the end. Let me wash my knife real quick. And then I'm going to dry it. And so in my block I've got a honing steel. Looks like a little sword, like a little épée. What you're gonna do is I'm just gonna slide my blade across it like this. Now you want to make sure you have no children running around or animals or your husband next to you, you know. But you're just gonna make it back and forth. And then I always sharpen up one side and then I flip my knife over and then I kind of do it the same thing on the other side. Now you have to, this way is very natural if you are right-handed. So it's really easy. This way feels a little bit different, but once you get the hand of it, you'll get it. And essentially you're running your blade across it to sharpen that little peak. And I will say I do this about twice a month. And then once I know I've got it nice and sharp, here we can wipe our blade off. And I'll show you, here's my little discard. But before it was sticking, but now, apparently I didn't get it sharp enough. Sharpen it more. I was like, it should cut right through it really easily once you have it there. I normally am not talking when I do this, so I probably do a whole bunch more. It takes about a minute to sharpen up a knife if you've gotten it done really well. Let's try this now. There you go. You see how it just sliced through now? Super simple, super easy. Make sure you are paying attention or sharpening there. But it's really easy. A lot of times I'll do it after I've cut a tomato or an onion or a pepper. Those are my three that I'm always like, they stick on. And when I snag on those, and the tomato's the worst because, you know, onions and peppers are still a bit firm. Tomatoes, they're softer, so they have no give back. And that's when you know your knife is dull, is when they can't cut it through there. But you don't think, oh, sharpening my knife, my blade is going to be gone in like no time. I've had my knives for about 17 years now, and I have yet to burn them. Or not burn them, I've yet to disappear them, I should say. Look, it's a full knife blade. I've got no kind of crazy wedges on it. It's also, you know, buy a good quality knife and it will last you. Let me grab this out for our bacon. I got my my knives for my wedding gift. And so they're like 16, 17 years now. I'm going to take my bacon out. It's nice and kind of crispy. It's a thicker cut, so they don't get as crispy as I like, but if I cook them anymore, I know they'll burn. So we're going to put them out, let them soak up that extra grease on our paper towel, and then we're going to start sauteing off our chicken here. I'm going to add in a little bit of my bacon grease to the olive oil. This will be adding a little extra flavor. And then we're going to start cooking our chicken up. It should be nice and hot now. And I'm just going to do 2 fillets at a time because I don't want it to sweat down too much. Okay. We're going to let those cook. Because we filleted them in half, they're going to cook a lot faster than if we kept the whole thing full. I'm going to grab a trivet over here because I'm done with this bacon grease, but I don't want it to go down my drain or anything. Okay, put it right here. We've got our bread. We're going to slice up my sourdough, my leftover sourdough from last night. And we'll just toast it a little bit on my skillet here when we get closer to assembling it. But while we're waiting, let's make our strawberries for our kind of pound cake shortcake. So I'm going to start, we'll give them a quick rinse. I always love strawberries in the summertime because I got these for $1.25 each. And that to me is a win because they're in season, so they're nice and cheap. You know, the same time you buy these at like winter time and they'll be $7. Okay. We're going to just slice these up. I'll start off with one. I'm probably not going to use the whole 2 pounds, but I'm definitely going to use more than 1 pound because my kids love strawberries. And just kind of take off the tops and do quick little slices. I find, a paring knife, this is actually just a serrated steak knife, but it works so great for slicing these. And the best method I find is the thumb method. You're not going to cut yourself. I'm pushing down on the blade. I'm not going to cut myself. And I just push the knife through until it hits my thumb. You might feel like, oh, you're going to cut yourself. You're not going to cut yourself. You're not pushing hard enough to go through your skin. These are pretty soft. And it's just a much faster way than putting them out on a cutting board and trying to slice them. I can cut this strawberry up really, really fast. And it's just an easier method. I think as you get more comfortable in the kitchen, your knife skills get better. Practice makes perfect and whatnot. Let's see how my chicken got a nice little sear on these. They are looking delicious. I'm going to turn this down to about a 4 now. I had it on a 5. I'm going to bring it down just a little. And we'll finish up slicing these. Now, with a shortbread, when you make your strawberries, you tend to make your strawberries really, really sweet because shortbread biscuits have very little sugar in them. They're not as sweet. With a pound cake, you don't need to make your sugared strawberries as sweet because your pound cake has a lot more sugar in it. And if you do your strawberries too sweet, then it's sweet on sweet on sweet. So you want to use less sugar with a pound cake, the slice up strawberries, than you do with a short cake. And then if you do angel cake, which is that really foamy, soft, spongy cake, that one is kind of in the middle. You can use a little bit more on there, but I'm always like, use a little bit less on this because you don't need them that sweet. But vice versa, if you use with a short cake, if you don't have enough sugar on your strawberries, then it feels like it's missing something. Let's get these guys out. And I always wash my strawberries right before I use them because I find that unless you want to take them out and really pat everyone dry, they'll get mushy really fast if you wash them before when you first get them and then leave them in your fridge. Okay. We'll save these strawberries for another day. And these are trash. Now we're going to pour a little bit of sugar over these strawberries. Now, a lot of times when I serve strawberries just up as a fruit for our kids, I'll sprinkle about half a tablespoon of sugar over them for them to sweeten them up if it's not prime season. Well, since we're using this to sweat out and make a little bit of a sauce, I'm going to use I want to say it's a little over a third of a cup, but not quite a half a cup. This is going to give you a nice kind of sticky strawberry syrup from the natural juices, which will go great for steeping into your pound cake and give you more of that strawberry flavor. When I'm making my strawberries for shortcake, I'll use a little over a half of a cup for this bowl size, which is about 1.5 pounds of strawberries, because I do want it a little bit more sweeter. But for this, you don't need it. Okay. Now you're just going to let them sit. You want to mix your strawberries up with your sugar a little bit before you're ready to serve them because you need those natural juices to sweat out and dissolve the. Are you stealing my bacon? Can't leave anything. I'm going to move my plate over here. These are for the BLTs. You get no bacon on yours now. You're stealing my precious bacon. But you want to let them sit and sweat because if you try to eat them now, they'll be gritty. So about 5-10 minutes minimum, and then they'll have that nice kind of perfect texture to them. Let's grab our plate out. This first round should be nice and ready. We've got a nice good sear on them. So we're going to put them off here. And then we're going to do our next one into it. Okay. We'll steal these tongs for that next part. Okay, let's get our bread cut up. So this is my big sourdough loaf bread that I made yesterday. You can see it's pretty soft. I always cook mine to like a golden brown because I don't like my crust to be super crunchy because then it's hard to eat through. And I swear my little ones, they like gnaw on the crust if it gets more than this. But I was pretty proud because I rehabbed this after coming back from our vacation and it needed some love because it hung out in our cooler. So I'm gonna cut it here, deciding how to best make these slices for our sandwiches. I'm not doing full loaf sandwiches because that would be like a sandwich this big and that would just be huge. There we go. So we've got enough. Let's see which way. And I'm just going to cut through and then we'll add a little bit of butter on one side and we're just going to toast it off just a little bit. I don't want to do a full toast in them because again, I don't want them to get more crunchy, and sourdough bread is one of that more, has a thicker, heartier crust, and I want us to be able to eat it. There we go. So we've got enough. And then we've got, I wonder, I could probably make a teeny tiny one out of this one. This will be a perfect for Evie. There we go. And then the little heels. Okay. So let me get my butter over here. And then I've got my legendary butter paddle. And I'm just gonna, again, I'm gonna just spread it on one side. I'm gonna turn my skillet on over here. And we're just gonna just kind of crisp these up on one side. That way, you know, it's something better than a nice little butter crunch on your sandwiches. But with this, I don't want to toast it up completely because I want it to be fairly easy to eat. There we go. Might have to do it in stages. We're going to do 5 on this round. And then we'll go through. Our chicken looks like it's sounding like it's about ready to flip. There we go. I'm going to turn it down again. My skillet's nice and hot, so I'm going to turn it down to about a 3.5. Let it kind of that slow cook over it to get that good sear. Let's give our strawberries a little bit of a stir here. You can start to see we're getting that juice is sweating out, which will be so delicious on our pound cake. Now, if you like it also a little bit tart, you could squeeze some fresh lemon juice out of that. I'll give you a bit more juice and a little bit more tartness to it if you like. Let's whip up some fresh whipped cream for this because you got to have whipped cream with it. So I've got my heavy whipping cream. And again, you can really just do various amounts. It's going to like double in size when you whip it. So I'm putting in about a cup. That way I'll have 2 cups or so. And then I'm going to use a little bit of sugar in here. Not a whole lot of sugar, but I do want a sweetened cream base versus just a straight up whipped cream. So we're going to use about, I'm going to just do like a heaping tablespoon of sugar. If you go too much, you're going to have, it won't dissolve in there.
You have a question? Is heavy cream expensive where we are?
It's like, this is like $5 for it. So it's actually for a quart, which isn't too bad. Some some places, sometimes it gets expensive, it just price changes, but it hasn't been too bad recently. I find that it costs about the same as a gallon of milk here, depending on it. And then we're going to add in a splash of vanilla, like a fourth of a teaspoon, very little, but I want that subtle vanilla flavor to it. But you don't want to add too much because that extract can get have a nice strong flavor on it. I'm going to use my whisk attachment on here, and we're going to whisk this up. And I'm going to turn it up nice and high because you need it to whisk that air in here while we do this. There we go. And essentially we're just whisking the air in until it's nice and fluffy. But you don't want to over whisk it, otherwise you'll have a sweet butter. There we go. So we're just hitting around and getting it there. You can starting to see my movements more, which means we're getting close to it being whipped. There we go. So now we've kind of got a little bit of a wet whip. I can whisk it a little bit more because I wanted a little bit more of a peak, but not much more. There we go. I always say, when it starts to hold its shape a little bit, it's called kind of like a soft peak, which is perfect for this. Okay, we've got ours beeping over there. I'm going to just turn this down because that's almost done, but let's go check on the pound cakes, see how they are doing. I'm thinking they're just about done here. To get, push okay so it doesn't beep. I'm going to give them, yep, they're nice and firm on the top. That's when I know they're done. So we'll pull these out. They're not going to be super golden brown, like as brown as a full-on pound cake that sat in the oven for an hour. That has the tops much longer. But I look more for the nice kind of blonde color, but the firm peaks at the top. That's when I know they're done. Because if you were to touch this and they were to bounce back, that means your pound cake will then sink in because it's undone in the middle. So these were just 25 minutes and they are perfect. Which, again, this is why I love the mini loaves, because you're going to have a moist pound cake all the way through versus one that's kind of dried out on the edges because it's been baking so long in the larger ones. Okay, these are toasting up lovely. So I'm going to pull these off because, again, I want just a very light toast on them. Let's butter up the rest. We'll get them going, and then we're going to start assembling all of our goodies here. Okay. And I will say, if you don't have a butter knife, or I call it my butter paddle, and you are a person who eats a lot of bread or uses a lot of butter, you need to get one of these. Even my kids say this spreads much better than a knife, which just works well. This one's sentimental. My friend got it for me from Sweden because my mother was born in Sweden. So anything that's Swedish, I'm like, it's the best. But I love it, and it works great for spreading that butter. Perfect. I'm doing just a very light toast on these because, like I said, I don't want them to get crunchy, but I do want them to have just a little bit of a crispness and that butter kind of flavor on the sourdough, which will just make it delicious. I think this guy's ready. And now that my skillet is nice and hot here, it's going to heat up fast. So this gives you, my hair is getting caught. There we go. This gives you the soft side on the inside, but that crunch on the top, which is perfect for a sandwich, for a BLT. I'm going to take off my chicken here. It's nice and cooked. We've got this, see, nice golden brown over there. And put it on there, let it sit, bring off those juices. And we will be ready to assemble in just a second. These are getting there perfect. But this is why I love my griddle pan for. You know, when I bought it, I bought my set of Hexclad, which if you're looking for a nonstick pan, Hexclad is amazing. I went through so many other ones before I found Hexclad, and I love it. Gordon Ramsay was right. They are indestructible. No scratches, even after 2 years of heavy use. But they were offering a sale on this. They're like, put it in your cart and it will only be $100. I was like, do I really need this pan? You know, I'm like, that's a lot of money on a pan. I'm like, and how often do I make pancakes or whatnot? Well, I use this pan for everything. I make my naan on it. I make my tortillas on it, pancakes, grilled cheeses, toast, crepes, everything. So it actually is one of my favorite pans. And granted, yes, you could do this stuff in a frying pan, but what's nice is you see it's a short lip, so you can slide your spatula right under. I'm going to turn these off because we've got a nice little toasting on them. There we go. Let's bring, I'm trying to decide where I want to assemble all of my, let's bring everything over there. I have a bit more space to assemble because, and then we'll bring got my strawberries, my whipped cream. My pound cake pan is not as hot now, so I can slide this over. There we go. Okay. Now I feel like I'm like ready to take your order, guys. Let's grab our plate. And then I need a spoon for my whipped cream as well. And then a spoon for my mayo, because if you're like me, you need mayo on your sandwich. Okay. Let's start out. I'm going to find 2 slices of bread that are nice and equal. Those looking good. Okay, we got our base. I'm going to put a little bit of mayo on here, a nice kind of spoonful, spread it out, have it on there, because I always feel like sandwiches need a little sauced kind of wet base. Then we're going to add on our lettuce. So you've got the lettuce first. I like to put it here. Then we have our tomatoes. We're going to throw on our red onions, and I'm putting them down here so that they hold on to our sandwich better. And then we're going to add on our chicken that we sauteed up. And then, of course, we need our bacon on there. And so now we've got our delicious, where did I put that slice of bread? Bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich with chicken. And it is quite a mouthful here, but it will be delicious on our homemade sourdough bread. Now, let's not forget our delicious pound cake. Look how good this is. Soft, tender, dense, moist, delicious. So we're going to put it in here. We're going to cover it. Well, I kind of do a double cover. So we do a first round of strawberries on here. And that way when you kind of break in with your fork, then you're going to do a dollop of the whipped cream on it. Beautiful. And then I always like to add a few more strawberries on top to kind of make a nice kind of sugary strawberry flavor to our pound cake. So just a delicious kind of summer classic. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, show you what we're making for our family, and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page, so if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to that link, search for what we cooked for, BLTs and strawberry pound cakes, and cook along with me again at home. We also have our link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our cooking gadgets. I've got my Hexclad in there. I've got my baking sheets, everything that I use in my kitchen that I've added it to my storefront. I even got my knives in there. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe.